very warm welcome, Mr. Amitabh Kant. It's a pleasure to have you here to the second edition of Business Standard Manthan. So as the topic suggests, it's about India in the reset world. Your opening remarks, what do you think? You've already said that it's an opportunity for India. So can you explain?
Well, I think it's a huge opportunity for India because there are basically three things happening in the world. One is that you've had a major war going on for about 1,000 days, and therefore food, fuel, fertilizers have got impacted. And my personal view is that that war will sooner than later come to an end because of the initiative, and particularly so because Russia has voted in the United Nations against in favor of Russia, actually, yesterday. So my view is that in the coming months, we may have a different scenario on ground. And also because Zelensky is visiting USA. And secondly, you're seeing global supply chains very badly disrupted across the world, huge tariffs being imposed by United States, 100% on automobiles, 50% on batteries, and Europe putting 45% on Chinese goods. This is quite unprecedented in the history of tariffs, and therefore, you're seeing huge muscular industrial policies. And the third is that you're seeing new forces of production, artificial intelligence, quantum computing. All these will have a huge impact on production, productivity, and there's an opportunity, huge opportunity there to technologically leapfrog for India. And so these are the three trends. So my personal view is that with the United States walking out of UNFCCC in climate, the first time when it walked out last time, China took that opportunity and today controls 80% of the critical mineral market. It controls 78% of the solar market. It controls 70% of EV markets. Many people do not realize this, but Tesla actually controls only about 11% of the electric vehicle market. BYD is controlling 21% of the market. And in addition to that, China also controls solar and wind. Now, this time when the United States walks out of UNFCCC and climate commitments, there's a huge opportunity for India. India needs to become a champion of two-wheelers, three-wheelers, in the electric vehicle market, because we are a champion of exporting electric two-wheelers and three-wheelers. If you don't go electric, you lose those markets. And similarly, we need to accelerate the pace of our renewable energy, exceed 500 by 2030, and actually use that to crack green hydrogen and become the cheapest producer of green hydrogen. And so to my mind, it's a huge, huge opportunity for India, and also in the field of artificial intelligence to technologically leapfrog, to find solutions to the challenges of the citizens.
In terms of policy making and strategizing from the government side, what do you think government is not doing right and that it should be doing now?
Well, the government is doing a lot of things right in terms of the budget, etc. My view is that the pace of implementation and implementation at all levels, including the state government, needs to be pushed very hard. That's number one. So my view is that India will normally grow at rates of 6%. We need to accelerate it further to about 8.5% to 9%. 9% acceleration means that you need a lot of states to do the weightlifting around. And this would mean that states must become easy, simple. They must remove or eliminate a lot of rules, regulation, procedures, act. That's critical to my mind. That's very, very important. And the third is that we need to do urbanization in a very sustainable manner. Urbanization is a driver of a lot of growth. It's a driver of good quality jobs. The 46% of people who work in agriculture as wage laborers need to get into industry and urbanization, and that's very important. So three things: push the pace of implementation very rapidly. Second, make India very easy and simple. Third, get a lot of more states to grow at high rates. Fourth, do urbanization. And fifth, last point I want to make is that I'm a great believer in free enterprise. It's the power of the private sector. And unless and until the private sector grows very rapidly in India, that invests in India, there's too much of Indian bureaucratic mindset, is too much of socialism. So we need to scrap many more rules, regulation, procedures, make India totally a nation for free enterprise to grow and flourish. That's, to my mind, very, very important.
Yeah, there has been a lot of talk about cutting regulatory hurdles. So you believe that can be done in the near future in India? Even the budget spoke about it, the economic survey spoke about it. So can it be done? Less government not coming in the way. Do you think it can be done?
Well, this government has been doing it. You know, when I was Secretary, Department of Industrial Policy, we pushed for ease of doing business. India jumped up 79 positions in the World Bank ease of doing business. Then we started ranking states. First year we did this, Gujarat came number 1. Next year Andhra beat Gujarat. Third year Telangana beat Andhra and Gujarat. But the good thing was that Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, who were 24th and 25th, they jumped up to 4th and 5th position. They are mineral rich. If the eastern part of India starts improving and becomes easy, simple, more and more investment comes in eastern part of India, and that's critical to my mind. If 45% of your population is in UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh. If these states start growing at 10 to 11%, you'll have consistent growth over a long period of time. So the real action is in states now, and states need to dismantle all their regulatory burdens in a very, very big way. Reform, reform, and reform has to be the key mantra of the next 6 months. Deregulate, deregulate, deregulate. That is the key.
So government should get out of the way.
Absolutely, get out. Not merely get out of the way, it should ensure that the private sector grows and flourishes. I'm making this point because there's only one country in the world, whether Trump goes and Biden comes, or Biden goes and Trump comes in, or Clinton or Obama or anything. United States has 26% GDP, controls 26% of the global GDP. It controls 44% of the market capitalization with just 4% population. And that's simply because of the strength of private sector. It's free enterprise. Free enterprise must get into the mind of every single Indian. Indians just, you know, the Indian regulators start building regulations. Huge number of regulations have been built up by every single regulator in India. Every department starts regulating. There's an excessive dosage of regulation. All this needs to be not get out of the way, but totally dismantled.
That's very reassuring. And, you know, during last Manthan, we had spoken about the animal spirit of India Inc. Today, it got, spoken about many times. In fact, all the speakers, including the finance minister, referred to it. So do you think animal spirits are out, not out? When will it be out if it's not out?
No, the animal spirits are not out yet. But animal spirits could have come out earlier, but for the COVID, and I think India needs to put out far more credit. The second point I want to make is that credit flow is very important in India, and the private credit to GDP ratio in India is just about 50%. In the United States, it's 220%. In Korea, it's 180%. So the private credit will enable you to grow. Government debt to GDP ratio is high. But private credit to GDP ratio is low in India. And that needs to grow rapidly in an orderly and systematic manner. And that means that now, with all this formalization of your economy, UPI, all this digitization happening, we should be able to provide a lot of more credit to our SMEs and MSMEs and micro units on a non-collateral basis. So the private credit to GDP ratio has to grow very rapidly for Indian economy to grow. The economy can't grow at 9 to 10% without private credit. And private credit is very, very critical to my mind. It needs to rapidly grow and on a non-collateral basis. And, you know, there can be schemes like first loss guarantees, etc., which the government put in during the COVID and is now putting in for MSMEs. But the banks need to do it in a far more aggressive manner. The financial institutions there's need for far more deepening of credit in India.
Coming to the core issue of trade, which you've been, closely dealing with as a bureaucrat and later in Niti Aayog also at G20. multilateralism to bilateralism. Do you think that's the right path to?
No, you'll have both bilateral trade agreements. You will have some multilateral trade agreements. These are things which will happen with geopolitics. But India needs to pursue both. And to my mind, India needs to pursue bilateral trade agreements definitely in a very vigorous manner. Because exports are important. I'm saying this that every time you can look at the history of India, every time India has grown at high rates of 8 to 9%, India has grown on the back of exports. So there are, to my mind, this is very, very critical. Without exports growing, and exports need large companies. And I made this point last year that you need about 1,000 large companies in India. You need a huge number of large companies because large companies create their own integration of tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 manufacturers who then supply to the large companies. And without large companies, you will not be able to export because the unit cost of production falls very rapidly. You've suddenly seen Apple becoming a large manufacturer in India and becoming the second largest exporter. You need about hundreds of such companies growing and expanding in terms of size and scale. And the production-linked incentive was designed to make large companies in India so that you produce more, you get benefit, you produce more, you keep growing bigger for the next 5 years. That should be our objective, that we constantly keep growing large companies in India.
Linked to what you just said, grow bigger, you need so many big companies, not one or two or three like we have in terms of conglomerates. So the question is, why don't we have global brands?
No, because the Indian mindset is that those who are big, we should pull them down. Instead of making small companies grow big, we first say that make the big small. I mean, you listen to many of our economists, and all learned economists who are all communists, incidentally. These economists are all communists. You know, they say that, and even the bureaucratic mindset is very socialistic. So they say those who have become big, break them up, make them very small, instead of saying that the small should become big. And that, to my mind, is very, very critical. The Indian mindset has to become big. We must start thinking big. We must start thinking large. We must start thinking that we are here to capture the global markets. You know, the Chinese, when they manufacture, their first thinking is that I'm going to penetrate the US market. The Koreans did this, the Chinese did this, the Japanese did this. But Indians think that I'm producing here to penetrate Bihar or UP or Delhi or Maharashtra. We never think of the global markets. Without penetrating global markets, India can never be a major market. Major producer.
What, according to you, would be the recipe to have global brands? I understand about the mindset and, don't bring them down. But is there anything that policymakers should also look at? And
global brands, the best way is to find your products and distribution in international retail outlets, distribution outlets. You go to international outlets, you'll find Dilma tea of Sri Lanka at all retail outlets from New York to this. Indian products by brand are not available. So the brand building is a very hard exercise of creating good packaging, good product, putting your brand, seeing that it is found in retail outlets. That's important to my mind. But it's starting to happen. I was very impressed with this new Mahindra electric cars. They will give Tesla a real run for the money in the Indian market. Tesla will find it impossible to compete with that product. It's brilliant. And so when Tata's come out with their new products, these Indian electric vehicle cars, Tata's new EV-born product when it comes out in another year and a half, the Mahindra cars and the Tata cars will not allow Tesla to take a market. Tesla will find it impossible to sell their cars at that price in the Indian market. It's a very competitive market, but Indian products are world class. And actually my view is that they will fall short of capacities. They will have to export to the rest of the world. So Indians are capable of doing this like we've done with two-wheelers and three-wheelers. We should go and capture the world markets.
Are you driving an EV?
I drive an EV and I've just booked for a Mahindra EV.
Great. So that's an example for everyone to look at and probably emulate.
I think every Indian should move over to an EV, and I think the government, I've been a long-time propagator, that government should not buy any fossil cars. All this fossil fuel cars which they are buying, they should switch over to buying only EV cars. And government should become the first drivers of EV vehicles in India. Both the central and the state governments.
Have you given this input to the
Yeah,
government?
I've given this input already.
And what is the Prime Minister's response?
No, I don't know whether the Prime Minister, but the expenditure department should take a call on this. It's not the Prime Minister's call. It's the expenditure department. It'll be far more economical. It'll be far more commercially viable. And, you won't have operative expenditure. You won't have fuel leakages. It'll be far more better for governments to buy. And EV vehicles today are available at as cheap, if not cheaper prices than fossil fuel cars in India. So we should go all out to push EV. We must become a champion of EV. I'm a great believer.
When India hosted the G20 summit and you were the Sherpa, you still are, it was a global moment for India. You've also written a book on that. Many congrats. What now? What is G20 doing to handle the situation, the global reset, India reset because of global scenario? How are you looking at it?
So my view is that United Nations has failed. The Security Council has been non-functional because one of the Security Council members has been at war. And therefore, the only body which is representative of Global South, of G7, of China, Russia, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and now African Union, in which India played a very major role and made G20 into a G21, will have a very critical and a very significant role to play in many critical bodies. And that's why India could achieve consensus on all key and critical issues confronting the world, including on the Russia-Ukraine para, and on issues of development, women-led development, digital public infrastructure, etc. And I think G20 will continue to play because a very major and critical role simply because the UN remains non-functional.
Are you glad that, when India hosted, it was in the pre-Trump era, G20 summit? Could it have been more difficult at this point?
No, Trump or no Trump, India would have remained successful in G20. India would have negotiated well, strongly, and come out successfully.
You made some important points about innovation and R&D in the recent past. So what do you think, how is India placed in R&D and innovation? Are we doing enough research? You've also said that IIT should change its curriculum to be in sync with what is required.
Yeah, so my view is that it's a different world we are living in, and you will see a lot of convergence of soft power with good computing power to be able to develop sovereign foundational models. It's not the first winner, but it's about the AI race has just begun. The race is wide open, and in the next 2 to 3 years, those who do it at with less energy consumption, those who are able to convert software with hardware better, those who are able to do clever engineering will be the winners. It's important that India creates foundational models because otherwise we lose all our civilization, all our history, all our we have huge number of dialects and 22 official languages. We need to be proud of all that. And therefore, you need, Indian history must be taken into account, and all that foundational models, Indian foundational and sovereign models alone will be able to do. Now, to be able to do that, there's a huge shortage of data scientists, there's a huge shortage of machine learners, there's a huge shortage of artificial engineers, there's a huge shortage of bias. Our startups are facing of product developers. Where will they come from? They'll come from our triple IITs and our IITs. These curriculums are outdated and they need to be restructured so that we have an excess supply of these, what is required according to the market. And if India is to provide 30% of the skilled manpower to the world by 2047, then we need our curriculum to be very dynamic and to be in tune with the market realities of today.
In the previous session, I think there was a question on number of hours working, how many hours a week. That has been, ongoing narrative. I think you also work 7 days a week, don't you?
No, I strongly believe in hard work. Let me first say this. I strongly believe that Indians must work hard, whether it's 80 hours or 90 hours, but Indians must work hard. If your ambition is to move from a 4 trillion to a 30 plus trillion dollar economy, you can't do it by entertainment and going by the views of some film stars. Indians must learn. Japan was made by hard work. Korea was made by hard work. China was made by hard work. We have made it a fashion to talk about not working hard. So we start appreciating people who say, no, we should not work hard. Why? India must work hard to deliver. What is being said is that we must learn the art of delivering projects in advance. We must learn the art of delivering project to world-class excellence, and we should not have time and cost overruns, and that will come with a mindset that we are going to build India, which will be the best country in the world.
So, Mr. Kant, what happens to the work-life balance that everyone is looking at?
Even I work every day for 1.5 hours. I do physical slogging, I sweat it out. I also play golf, I do many other things. You can do this even with a lot of hard work. So keep apart 1.5 hours. You still have 22.5 hours. You can sleep and still work hard. So there's plenty of time to manage your work-life balance. But in the name of work-life balance, don't make it fashionable that people should not work hard. We are all sending wrong messages to the young generation of India that India can become a great nation without working hard. No country has been able to do this.
So, great nation, do you think the Viksit Bharat objective can be met by the time frame that we've set for it?
See, we must understand what the challenge is. 4 trillion to 30 plus trillion. That means your GDP has to grow 9 times. Your per capita income has to grow 8 times. Your manufacturing has to grow 16 times. That is the challenge for India. Now, that can happen only if we do the following, to my mind. 1, do manufacturing and exports. Large-scale manufacturing and exports, do sustainable urbanization. Thirdly, India grows on 50% of its population. We are growing right now at 50% of its population, 50% are labor wage workers or living on government doles. We have to make them, and they also want to become, and what the government is attempting to do is to make the balance 50% very active participants in the economy by all the schemes which have been announced in the budget and many more, that we make all these people very active participants in our economy. And with 100% of the people becoming active participants, India is bound to grow at 9 to 10% per annum for the next 3 decades. That should be our objective.
Towards that mission, do you think artificial intelligence, ChatGPT of the world and DeepSeek and everything, will they be enablers or will they come in the way?
So every advent of technology has only led to creation of more jobs, but of a different kind. Never in the history of the world has technology actually led to a disruption of jobs. You can check it out. Every time it has led to creation of more and more jobs, but of a different kind of jobs. What India needs to do is to actually train its workers for the new world of tomorrow, and that's very, very critical to my mind, so that we are able to take all the benefits with job creation in the world of artificial intelligence and quantum computing.
Mr. Kant, can we take a couple of questions from the audience?
I thought you would grill me enough.
Just a couple of...
You asked me more questions than even the UPSC members had asked.
Okay, couple of questions. Mr. Kant hasn't said no, so yeah.
No. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
From Chennai. So, you said that youngsters should go for and learn new things like AI. So how do you see the skill development in India in future as well? Because in our perspective, skill development is always lagging compared with China, Japan, or US, or European countries. How do you see this? Because we always, not a manufacturer, we are the assemblers of whatever we using this.
So one of the key things, schemes which the Prime Minister had initiated were these Atal Tinkering Labs at the school level from 5th standard onwards, so that every young student, and we've created a lack of tinkering labs so that at the school level itself, the students get used to, all cutting edge technologies. And my view is that everybody need not go into college education, everybody should get into vocational education, much like what Germany does. And in Germany, the vocational education is basically the private sector taking these people as interns, which is what India started doing now. So hopefully this new methodology and skilling through ITIs and private sector should lead to a lot of more skill development in the future. But we should provide skills which will lead to actual creation of jobs.
Any other question? Yes.
Hello.
At the front.
Can I ask a question?
Next one.
All right. Okay.
I represent Power Guild Treasuries. So you just mentioned the importance of green vehicles. There is a scheme of sovereign green bonds and the Indian corporates raising green loans from overseas and the domestic country. The green bonds are not very popular because the tax incentives are not commensurate to enable the investor to sacrifice certain portion of the interest income.
What is your question?
I'll just come to it. There's a concept of greenium, which is prevalent in the overseas market. If a corporate raises loans at say 7%, if it is a green loan, he is able to raise it at say 6.5%. So this enables the companies to venture into large-scale mammoth projects which give economies of scale. I feel that if some tax incentives are provided for green bonds, it would be a great help, not only for the climate diversity, biodiversity, climate change, and environment protection, but also to enable Indian corporates to undertake mega-scale projects.
Can you give me a brief one-page note, and I'll discuss this bilaterally with you. We'll do our best to take this forward.
So I have a question for you.
Yes, yes.
We are an agri-tech company, and we develop a software as a solution platform for agriculture, especially those targeting, looking into the carbon trading market. My question is, what is the government of India doing to help farmers? So there is the nature-based solutions, which is part of the voluntary carbon credit market. And India produces about 10% of the global credits, especially from agriculture, forestry, and land use. And this percentage is going to rise up to 15 to 20% by 2030. So how is the government helping farmers, especially the small-scale farmers or the plantation farmers, to tap into this market and monetize farmlands, basically, and forestry? So this is the question.
Well, it's an important issue which you have raised, because you're saying that the small farmers can gain a lot of carbon credit on account of this. I personally am of the view that we need to educate our farmers much more, and I'm quite sure that the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Environment must be having a scheme for this purpose to educate and ensure that the credits actually flow to the actual producer. I'll be very happy to look into this and respond to it in case I get your...
Can I send you a brief synopsis about our company and what we do in this field?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
I'll be very happy to look into it.
Thank you.
Yeah, any last question?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Good afternoon. Thank you for this igniting session. I'm Amitabh Mitra, and I'm a social entrepreneur. So my question to you is that when we are talking about Viksit Bharat in 2047, we are not just talking about a section of the society. We are talking about an inclusive growth, and we are talking about developing everyone, irrespective of all the class, creed, anyone, right? So how is the government right now, or the new India, is prepared to take the lead where me, who's working mostly in the rural sector, I'm seeing the son or the child of the farmer is not wanting to become a farmer in the conventional way. The children of the laborers are not wanting to become the laborer. So if we are taking technology as a source to push agrotech or any change of manual labor into technology-driven labor, how the government right now is prepared to be able to match the idea of Vikshit Bharat?
No, it's an important question. First and foremost, I talked about India growing on 50% of the population, and I talked about the eastern part of India because I believe that you have to grow in an inclusive manner. Without inclusivity, we'll end up creating two Indias, which is not the job. And I think our entire objective should be to grow with jobs and grow particularly in areas which there is slow growth, so that we do this. Now, I've implemented the aspirational district program, which looked at the 115 of the most backward districts of India. We worked on outcomes, and we worked on the rankings of these districts in terms of performance on outcomes, and we were putting out their ranking on a minute-to-minute basis in public domain. And we could create a sense of huge competition amongst districts, and these districts transformed radically. Radically, they moved up, and therefore there was growth with inclusiveness, and I think we need to focus on many of these districts as we are doing now, so that these districts transform themselves. Now, you can't force anybody to say that if you're a laborer's son, you must be a laborer. They must move up the value chain. An agricultural son, nowhere in the world can you say that an agricultural son should only be in agriculture. They move to urbanization. That's historically the trend everywhere. And cities are centers of growth, they are centers of excellence, they are centers of science, they are centers of innovation. And that's why why is the Indian population, while the share of agriculture has come down, the population in agriculture has increased from 42 to 46% post-COVID. You need to bring that down sharply to 15% and provide better job opportunities. Better job opportunities in manufacturing and better job opportunities in urbanization. And that is the only way that you'll provide better paid jobs for these people. And that is critical to my mind, that India must urbanize, India must manufacture more. It can't grow on the back of only services sector. It has to fire on all cylinders. It has to fire on services, it has to fire on manufacturing, it has to fire on agriculture, where the productivity levels must go up, and it also must fire on urbanization.
Last question from me. You have already told the younger generation that there is no other alternative to hard work. We have to work hard. Are there any other inspirational words that you would like to convey to the younger generation sitting here and through our newspaper?
Yeah. Well, three things I'd say. The work hard, exercise even harder than hard work. You must exercise 1.5 hours a day. And third thing, that have one extracurricular activity, whether it's reading, gardening, or something. So hard work, 1.5 hours of exercise, and one extracurricular activity.
That is a lot of hard work, I must say. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Kant, for this lovely discussion.
Always remain positive and always remain optimistic about India.